Hey guys, let's talk about Halloween H20. I saw this one in a movie theater when it first came out, but I hadn't rewatched it since then. The movie opens with a nurse returning home, having found her house broken into, and there's two teenagers that are helping her, and I had completely forgotten that one of the teenagers was played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Also, the nurse mentioned that she's Dr. Loomis's nurse. You blink and you'll miss it, but she does mention that. This whole sequence is pretty much entertaining, very engaging, but there was something about it that was nagging at me, and it just felt so Friday the 13th more so than Halloween, and it just kept on bugging me, like, why does this feel so Friday the 13th? When I was preparing for this video, I looked up who the director was, and it's Steve Miner, who directed Friday the 13th, Part 2 and Part 3. So now it makes complete sense why that sequence felt very Friday the 13th as opposed to Halloween. And there is a difference. What he did with this is still miles above the last three sequels, and I'm talking about 4, 5, and 6. Producer Mustafa Akkad is back, however, his name is not first in the credits anymore. We get some exposition from a couple of detectives talking. Then as the title sequence plays, we see newspaper clippings and we hear a voiceover by Dr. Loomis talking about how long he worked with Michael and how he's pure evil. Just a refresher in case anyone forgot that. I assume that this one ignores the last 4 sequels and it's just a direct sequel from Part 2. Jamie Lee Curtis is back, and now Lori has become a headmistress at a private boarding school in California. She's still very much traumatized by what happened with Michael, and she has a teenage son with the worst haircut I've ever seen. I mean, look at this. It looks like a duck's butt. I don't think this was ever even in style during the time period that this movie came out. It's just, or at least where I'm from, maybe it was in style somewhere, but this is just wrong. Then a really cool moment happens in the film where we see Janet Leigh playing her secretary, which is really, really cool because Janet Leigh is her mother in real life, and one of the main reasons why Jamie Lee Curtis was even cast in the original Halloween is because John Carpenter was very much influenced by Psycho, and it just was like an added bonus to have the daughter of the star, so to speak, of Psycho in his slasher movie. So that was kind of a really cool moment. LL Cool J shows up as a security guard who is trying to start a career as a romance fiction writer, and he has the most annoying girlfriend or wife ever. Her phone conversation, she was just so irritating. I would have told her to shut the hell up. Granted, his writing was not great, but there's a way that you can offer criticism without tearing a person down. Also, it's not like he didn't have a job and he was just sitting at home on a couch talking about he's writing. He had apparently a full-time job, so if he's working on something on the side, why are you giving him grief over it? Remember how I just mentioned that the secretary played by Janet Leigh is Jamie Lee Curtis's mother? This movie thinks they're funny by having her actually say to Jamie Lee or to Lori, "If I may be maternal for a moment." I got a chuckle out of that. And then they have her walk over to the car, which is the same car that she drove in Psycho. And if you don't get the hint, then they start playing a few bars of the music from Psycho, and if you look really close, on the license plate is Norman Bates' initials. The mask in this is really, really bad. I mean, it's hard to not notice how bad it is, and then it keeps changing, and at first I thought, well, are they using 2 different masks? After watching the movie and in preparing for this video, I found out they used 4 different masks, and it shows. There's a subplot about Lori having a relationship with a guidance counselor. They also mentioned that she's divorced, but that part kind of didn't interest me at all, although he does try to help her. The score in this is terrible. I appreciate that they try to do something different and go in another direction, but it's almost jarring how different this score is. Until the very end when the familiar Halloween piano score actually kicks in. Another funny thing is, did you notice that when Lori drove the kids to the gates and she told them to go down to so-and-so's house and call 911, it was almost in the exact same way that she told the children in Part 1, and she even says, "Do as I say." I thought that was pretty funny. I can't get over how much his mask bugged in this movie. One of the best scenes in this movie is when Lori actually takes a knife and shanks the shit out of Michael. He falls over the banister, which he seems to do a lot. And she goes down and starts to try to shank him some more, but LL Cool J stops her. The police come and the coroner zips up Michael's body in the body bag, but then Lori steals the coroner's van and takes Michael on a ride because she wants to make sure he's dead. And there's a shot of her driving with Michael in the back. At first he's laying down, but then he sits up because that's what Michael does. And it really is reminiscent of that scene in Part 1 where she's at the door frame and he's in the background. So that was a nice little homage to that. But she does something really smart and slams on the brakes, sending Michael through the windshield. And then she waits for him to get up and hits him again with the car. This is one thing that I do love about Laurie Strode's character. They don't write her as being stupid. The only one thing that she did that was silly was in the first Halloween, she discards a weapon after using it only one time. But she does end up getting another weapon, so that's not that bad. As Michael is laying on the ground, Laurie walks up to him and he shows a little tiny glimmer of humanity just before she decapitates him with an axe. And I remember when I saw this in a movie theater how the audience kind of clapped when that happened. There's no coming back from that, right? Fade to black and cut to a generic 90s sad emo / grunge rock track. Now that I've given you a brief recap, let's talk about the specifics. Like all the others, this one had great lighting. That's one thing that all the Halloween movies have, is great lighting. The camera work in this is better than 4 through 6, but not as good as 1 through 3. Speaking of 4 through 6, there actually was a scene in this movie where a student gives a report about the Haddonfield massacre and actually mentions Jamie and what happened to her. But that was cut out. They kept the story simple. Michael wants to kill his sister and he kills anyone that gets in the way of that. The end. The action in it was okay, wasn't awesome, wasn't bad, it was just okay. Check this out. I found some storyboards of one of the scenes from this movie. These look pretty cool and show the conceptual work that they put into this. They really show how they put some attention to detail and how they wanted this scene to play out. And I thought this was a really cool thing to find. This had some slow parts and the kids didn't stand out at all except Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I would have switched him and Josh Hartnett's characters, and I would have had Joseph play the son and have Josh play the hockey player that gets killed at the beginning. All in all, H20 was not a bad movie. It wasn't as awesome as I think we all have thought that it was going to be, but it wasn't bad either. I'll be back in just a moment to talk about Halloween Resurrection. I saw this one also when it came out in the movie theater, and like the other one, I haven't seen it since. When I started watching it just now on demand, I actually rewound it because I missed Mustafa Akkad's name in the credits, and it did appear at the beginning of the movie. Isn't that a strange thing for me to look forward to? But I've seen so many of these, and I've grown accustomed to seeing Mustafa Akkad's name at the very beginning. I grouped these two together because they had rappers in them. The last one had LL Cool J and this one has Busta Rhymes, and they both feature Jamie Lee Curtis. At this point, Laurie is institutionalized, and Jamie Lee Curtis has a much better wig in this one than she had in part 2. This time the exposition is delivered by 2 nurses as they tend to Laurie, while we see scenes intercut from H20. Except they add one little tidbit of information that Laurie decapitated the wrong guy, because somehow Michael Myers was able to crush the larynx of a guy and then put the mask on him. When and how he did this, who knows? Michael shows up to the mental institution to stalk Laurie because that's what he does. The mask is better in this than it was in the last one, but the hair is kind of inconsistent from shot to shot. So I'm guessing they used multiple masks in this as well. Unfortunately, Michael does eventually get Laurie, and then he gives his knife to a guy who's really obsessed with serial killers. This guy's babbling confirms that this story only recognizes 1, 2, and H20. I mentioned that because the new Halloween 2018 hits the reset and only recognizes the original Halloween from 1978, so it's a direct sequel from part 1. Next, we get introduced to some college kids who are going to take part in a reality show that is going to be filmed in a Myers house. I can't even be bothered to learn their names because they are just cannon fodder. Busta Rhymes and Tyra Banks are in charge of the reality show. They are like producers or the production staff, not sure. But shout out to Tyra Banks, sister of the big forehead. You know, we have to support each other, us ladies with big foreheads. It's Tyra, Sade, Rihanna, and me. By the way, why does Busta Rhymes have 3 different hairstyles in one head? Like, he has a fade and cornrows and dreadlocks all happening at the same time. And I don't understand how or why this is a thing. Anyway, I remember thinking in 1998, who would record themselves going into a house where murders occurred for a reality show? That's crazy. Cut to current day and we have Zach Tightshirt McBigpants Baggins traipsing through Bob Mackey's tavern in the Lizzie Borden house. I used to call this show Ghost Dude, but it's actually called Ghost Adventures. Seriously, he looks like a Blink-182 fan from the year 2001. We also have Ghost Hunters and Paranormal Witness, etc., but they aren't as entertainingly bad as Ghost Hunters. So anyway, we actually have 3 groups of people. We have the students that are going inside the Myers house. We have the producers that are out in the production van, and we have another group of students that are at a Halloween party, but they're watching the live stream of the other students walking through the Myers house. One of the students in the Myers house has had kind of an online relationship with another student that's at the house party. And this movie kind of plays this up as this brand new wild thing. Imagine years later finding out that people would be catfishing each other. This movie is like a 90s time capsule because they mention chat rooms, and like I said, they treat online relationships as something extremely revolutionary. Little did they know 20 years later we'd all be communally watching reality television and roasting the participants on Twitter. By the way, shout out to my 90 Day Fiance peeps and my 600-pound life peeps on Twitter. You guys make Sundays and Wednesday nights amazing. Because everyone has these head mount cameras, this movie is kind of partially found footage, and they actually make that footage look very realistic. One of the scenes I love because it's just so laughably funny is when Busta Rhymes comes face to face with Michael Myers, and they're both dressed as Michael Myers, and Busta, thinking that he's part of the crew, curses him out, and Michael just kind of stares at him, then does like a head tilt and walks away. Like he didn't know what to do with that. Maybe he considered Busta Rhymes crazier than him. Too crazy to kill. The kids walk through the house and get offed, get murked, get stretched, get whatever your regional terminology for killed to death is. All the while the kids at the party are watching a live stream of this all go down. The score in this really bugs too. They try to do something different, and it's like a large part of what Halloween is that score. And you just made the score sound like I Know What You Did Last Summer. The final girl tried to have a chainsaw fight with Michael, and that didn't work out. And then she just falls over, and there's like some cords on top of her, and she acts like she can't get up. But I'm like, why can't you get up? There's just some cords on top of you. Nothing heavy fell on top of you, and you're not tangled up within the cords. You're just laying there saying you can't get up. Like, maybe it was the way it was edited, but I did not see what harmed her and what made her feel like she couldn't get up. Then Busta Rhymes tries to kung fu fight Michael Myers. I'm not making this up. This is what is actually happening on the screen. And when that doesn't work, he electrocutes him in the dick and sets him on fire. I swear I'm not making this up. I know what I just said sounds like the rantings of a lunatic, but that's actually what happened in the movie. Michael gets taken to the morgue, and as the mortician is getting ready to examine him, his eyes open because, you know, he's Michael Myers. That's what he does. He doesn't die. Does a lot of things, but he doesn't die. Well, actually, he doesn't do a lot of things. He kills people and he doesn't die. So he basically does 2 things. 3, if you count, you know, tilting your head. Sometimes he tilts his head. Roll credits. The acting is a little bit hit or miss. Some people are really good, some people are not so good. The dialogue is clunky as hell. The kills are pretty standard. Nothing that really stands out to me, nothing great, nothing bad, just standard for a Halloween movie. The pacing was pretty good, it was not boring. And this is the second movie in a row where a brother survived. LL Cool J survived H20O, and Busta Rhymes survived this movie. This other brother, this guy right here, he didn't survive. Spoiler alert. The technical aspects are always good with these movies. I can never complain about the lighting. 4 through 6 had a few camera work issues. This one was a little bit better. Not as good as H20O, but still decent. So no complaints too much there. As always, like I say, the lighting in these movies is, you know, just perfect. But, like I always say, just because I like something doesn't mean you'll hate it. And just because I hate something doesn't mean you won't like it. Did you see H20O or Resurrection? Did you see them in movie theaters? Did you just now happen to see them streaming? How old were you when you saw them? And what did you think? Let me know in the comments. Bye.